Good morning, North America. Welcome to Church Talk TV. Lively talk about life, church, and church life. I'm your co-host, Dr. Bill Tenny-Brittian, and I'm joined, as usual, by my co-host, Dr. Kris Tenny-Brittian, and we're broadcasting from our studio in Columbia, Missouri, the heartland of America. Say good morning, Kris.
Well, good morning, and welcome to Church Talk TV.
Kris and Bill Tenny-Brittian here. Today, we are talking about the dream teams. And when I say dream teams, I mean multiple dream teams. Putting together the teams that a church needs to operate.
Yeah, I was thinking to make a church of our dreams.
A church of our dreams. There
Yeah.
we are. I like it. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have good teams, a church runs like a dream.
Yes, it does.
Good
Well,
leadership, good
generally,
teams.
Yeah, there it is. And
Right.
teams, exactly.
Right.
Notice we're not saying committees, we're
Oh,
saying
that's right.
teams.
Huge difference.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to say why?
Well,
Ask me more.
a committee is you nominate someone, and then often in churches, and then they nominate all the members of the committee as well. That's a committee. No question, that's a committee. A team is, you want to jump in?
Well, yeah. Well, I'm just thinking that when, and there are policies, we'll pick up on policies in a little bit, but there are policies about who can be on committees, blah, blah, blah. But the
Or who
difference
can lead
to me,
committees anyway.
or who can lead them,
Right.
blah, 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 and how they get on there often. But here's the reality. There are a lot of one-person committees out there, right? Which one person
of course
does
not a
not
committee.
a committee make, right?
No, nor a team.
Yeah,
Nor a team.
Well, wait. I want to go to the team
Right.
because the deal with the teams is that teams work together. They really are a team. It's like a baseball team or a football team or you get a tennis team, but that's not exactly
Not really.
the same.
That's
A
not-
lot of
yeah.
committees work like tennis pairs or whatever. Committees. But teams really are working together. They're a fine-oiled mechanism.
Typically, a team,
Go.
you raise up someone who has passion for the position,
Definitely.
and they choose their team. I can work with him. I'm not working with that person.
I want to.
Right, yeah, right.
Because
yeah.
they have the gifts, and you want people who are going to make your team look good, right?
right.
Who's going to make your team really function, not
Right.
because Aunt Mabel really liked that person and they're a really nice person,
Right.
or they're going to be mad at you. I've just been dealing with this with a church of recently, that this person who is so blasted toxic keeps ending up on teams because they feel sad for them, like they should be, or that person's
team
going to
leader
get
feels
mad.
bad for them.
Yeah,
Right.
or they're going to get mad at them or something.
Get
and it's
over
like,
it. Put people on the team you can work with and want to work with.
You're setting your team up for failure, and quite honestly, your team won't be a team. You
Right.
won't have 18 players, right?
Well,
okay.
we've chased off some weeds that we had no intention of going in. We have a lovely outline. This wasn't on it, but it's important stuff.
It is important
It
stuff.
absolutely
It
is.
is important stuff. So, okay, let me segue here maybe.
Right.
So today we want to talk about 3 types of teams. We want to talk about...
It's not 3 types, really. It's 3 types, kinds, I guess, whatever. Okay, types.
It is 3 types of teams.
All right, 3 different teams anyway.
No, because each team has teams. Each set of teams has sub-teams. Stick with me here, husband. Just stick with me. We're heading down this road.
Well, we're not going to talk about any of those
today-
sub-teams
We
today.
want to talk about ministry teams, the ministry team,
There we are.
about the administration team, and about the policy team. And I think when it comes to churches, you may be asking, a policy team? Well, the board, the blah, 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 the whatever does
Board,
policy.
council, session, vestry.
Whatever. And that, why would you need a team just for policy? Well, we're going to tell you why, but not before we talk about the ministry team.
All right, so I just want to real quick, before we go any further, just where this all comes from. Once upon a time, a guy named Wayne Cordero wrote a book, Doing Church as a Team. And he talked about the fractal model, which essentially divides the whole world into fourths. And you have 4 different team members, and each one of those has another team with 4 different, and it goes on like that. And those 4 teams are based on a fractal that is in the 4 key. 4 key strategies.
Right.
Invite, connect, disciple, send. We've talked about that a number of times. We'll probably continue to talk about that. But that's the ministry team. And if you only have a ministry team, your church is going to be very hampered
Yes.
because There's administration has to someone's got to do the building management. Someone has to do the money. Someone has to do the databasing,
Right.
and someone has to run staff, or there's a variety of different ways of aligning all that. But here's the deal: that's an administration team, and God bless him. I'm sure Wayne had that, but he didn't put it in his book, and so we put it down together.
Well, because he was trying to deal with those ministry teams.
Yeah, he did ministry
we're
teams,
still
right.
how many years later, well over 20 years later, trying to get that through and enacted and into pastors and leaders' brains, and the ones that are using it in the churches where you see it working. It's really working.
It's scalable. You can do it you can have that model with a church of 5 people and a church of 50,000 people. It works.
Okay,
Anyway.
but we've talked about fractals
Right,
before.
exactly.
We've talked to you, and very recently, about the 4 core strategies, the 4 core ministries that your church needs. So
That's the core of the ministry team.
the core ministry team. But you can't, as you're saying, I think this is what I'm hearing, and
Right.
I think I know from you, is that administration team has to be there. I mean, so does the policy team.
Right, yeah.
But you can't do your ministry without the administrative part.
right.
Where are you going to get the money from? How's that going to happen? So do you want to kick in?
Well, only and if you are stuck with having to do administration and ministry, you won't.
yeah.
What you'll find is you don't have time for ministry,
Right,
because
right.
all those other details will get in the
Right,
way, and
right.
they're always calling your name.
It's always a form to fill out. But again, I just want to say that a lot of churches are operating that way, right? I mean, everybody's doing everything, and
Right.
I'm even thinking about board meetings and churches and board council vestries, right? That are still operating on this. Well, you've got to bring a report, or you've got to send a report before that meeting, that monthly meeting, or
Right.
whatever.
And they get into the deep weeds of managing
Oh, my
everything the
gosh,
board does.
yeah.
So what we're
Go ahead.
saying is these 3 teams separate out some of those tasks,
Right.
so that each team can do what they're really effective at,
Yep.
so that your church can be effective and sustainable,
Oh,
and
yes.
faithful.
And
all right?
faithful.
So
So-
let's go. Let's touch
go
on the
ahead.
ministry team, because we've kind of beat that horse regularly.
Okay.
The 4 we just finished the 4 key strategies. of
Right,
those
I know.
teams,
I
but
thought you said let's touch on it. I thought we've just taught. You mean touched it. You want to go to the administration team.
No, hang on. We're going to talk about the ministry team has 4 leaders, and they manage
I see what
all
you're
the ministry. Okay, they manage all the ministry in the church. So you got the send ministry, or minister, key leader, whatever you want to call that person,
Right.
and they're in charge of making sure there's people coming in. And there's a lot of various ways that we've talked about that,
That's
how
the
that
invite.
happens. That's what I said.
You said send.
Did I say send?
Yeah.
All right.
If you didn't, oops.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm pretty sure I said
The
invite.
invite
Anyway,
person.
they're bringing people in. The second team is the connect team. The leader, they're responsible for making sure that new people connect to the church, members connect with each other. There's member care taking place, and there's ways in which we are connecting people into the church, the congregation, and on. Disciple, well, we know what the disciple leader does. They make disciples. It's more than Christian ed, but it is discipling, helping people become faithful, effective, and behaving like disciples of Jesus Christ. And then there's a send, or the go, which is all about creating neighborhood missionaries who go back out in the world, and the cycle starts over. And the ministry team handles all the ministry, and they make all the ministry decisions. They don't go to the board to ask whether they're going to have vacation Bible school or where to schedule vacation Bible school, because they're the ones that are closest to the ministry. They're the ones who make those decisions.
All right, so now we've really got to
Right.
keep going
Yep,
here
yep.
and get to that administration team. And this is one of my favorites because, as you're talking about that ministry and those needs and when might we go to the board, and you have to fund it. Somehow there has to be money. And we just want you to know that in a church that's doing anything, there's never enough money.
There never is.
Right.
Always.
Even in the
Yep.
largest of churches, people
Yeah.
will say, oh, that's a huge old church. They can do anything. No, they can't. Because vision, mission, ministry is always so much bigger. That vision, if it's a God vision, it's big. So there's never enough money. What tends to happen, though, in our congregations is that we'll hear, oh, we can't do that because we don't have enough money. and we hear that all the time, and we'll hear it from a finance committee.
Always.
Right? And often we hear this in conjunction when we don't like the pastor. It will get gripped into the pastor. The pastor isn't raising enough money. But here's the deal. It's that finance committee's responsibility to
make
raise
sure,
the money.
that's right, to make sure there's money.
Right, because it's not the finance committee or anybody else in administration to say, oh, you can't do that because you don't have the money or you don't have this or you can't do that. The job of the administrative team is to allow the ministry to, not allow, is to help, promote, undergird that ministry, to make that ministry successful.
The question isn't
effective.
The question isn't can we afford it? The question is how can we afford it? How can we make this happen?
And not how can we afford that?
Right.
It's
yep.
how we're going to
what are we going to do
happen.
to make this happen?
Right.
And sometimes that does mean we're going to cut something else that is not as effective.
Right.
But most of the time it means how are we going to raise the money to make sure that this ministry happens? And that's the responsibility of, again, the administration team has a finance group. It normally has a building and grounds kind of group. It normally has an office administration or that kind of staff, and it has an HR group.
Yeah.
Sometimes the administration group was less about the team is less about office management per se,
right,
and more about databasing and communications. Every church decides what those four are going to be, but there's always going to be finances. If you have a building, there's always going to be a building, and then there's normally personnel.
There has to be personnel,
yeah,
right?
So that makes up that team. Same fractal model,
right?
But we're dealing with the administrative pieces to make sure. And really, I hate the word administration. I think it really should be support team. It's a support team. We may have to change that in all our books and writings and blogs and everything else we've done. But it really makes more sense. They're there to support the ministry team to make sure they can get the ministry done.
Well, talk about a dream team. They're the ones who, I don't know, maybe
they
call
make
them
the dream.
midwife. So right,
Yeah.
Well, they don't make the dream. The ministry.
They make the dream come true.
They're midwives.
Right.
Mid-men, mid-husbands of the dreams. Okay, well, let me say this. I need to go back to this finance stuff. And for a lot of you, maybe even the majority of our churches, it's time for the annual stewardship drive.
Yep.
So we're out there
coming
trying
into fall.
to,
Yep.
right, so we got to raise the money so we can build the budget. And most churches, you don't work on the budget until you have your stewardship drive. Except for one church that I served a number of years ago that called it the subscription campaign. And so we did the budget.
I rather like that.
I don't like it because then you went and you asked people to subscribe to the budget.
Oh, no. I like the subscription model where you charge XYZ per person per year to be a part of the church.
Okay, I like that. Okay, that's a great model. Yes, I can handle.
There we are.
That is not what they were doing at all there. Yeah, no. So, but stewardship isn't just once a year or even twice a year, as we're watching. We're watching in a growing number of congregations. It's all year. So all through the year, you are helping to draw a connection between what people are giving and what you're doing with that money, about how it's making ministry possible. I mean, that's where people give, is when they're seeing ministry happening and they want to be part of that.
You never get a letter from your alumni association that says, hey, we need to meet our budget. They always have stories about how students and teachers, professors are making a difference in the world, and we need to take our marching orders from them, or at least take a hint from them. That's why people give money. They give the money to vision and results. Vision and results. If your church if you don't have any results, then there may be a reason why there's financial issues in the congregation.
Well, yeah, that says a whole lot about a whole lot of things, doesn't it?
We're kind of chasing this finance thing a little longer than I want to,
but
I want to add one more thing, and that is, Pastor, ultimately you are the person who is in charge of the fundraising. You have your team that you hand off, but you are the one who, in the pulpit, in the way you design your worship, et cetera, you are the one who sets that tone. And reality is, Pastor, we are only asking you to talk about money from the pulpit as often as Jesus talked about it in his teaching. And the only thing he talked about more than money was the kingdom of God. The rest of the time, the second most common thing he talked about was wealth and money. But he didn't beat up tithing. In fact, he never mentioned tithing except for the Pharisees who were kind of overdoing it. He talked about sacrificial giving. He talked about your relationship with money. He talked about what wealth could do for you, and etc. So, it's not always about you got to give. Yeah. It's how do you manage your money? And Jesus talked about that a lot. And the more we talk about money, the more we have that conversation, the more people will be comfortable with it when the time comes to actually ask for money.
Yes, indeed. Okay, that's so true. And I'm thinking again, in some churches you have lay people that are doing the stewardship moment. You want to start there, and you're talking about generosity. And talking, we call it giving of your time, treasure, talent, and testimony. So, how are you giving of your time? How are you giving of your treasure?
And again, always tying it to results.
Right.
Look at our church. This is what's happened here. Look at this person's life that's been transformed because of your ministry, of your support of this ministry.
So I know I'm mincing some words here, but every time you say, and I get it, I understand what you're saying, but what you're saying doesn't always sound like that in this case, and that is about the minister's the number one fundraiser. And the reason I come back at that is that it's always, there are, 3 or 4 number of reasons conflict, how it manifests. And one usually is that the minister isn't raising the money, and it's not just the minister's job. So
it's the minister's job to make sure it happens.
To make sure it happens, right. So you minister, if you're one of the leaders in the church, please hear this, that you're there with that pastor, with him or her, and that as they challenge you and ask you to step up, to broaden your horizons, then you've got to respond to that. The other thing, Pastor, you always want to make sure is have a list in your back pocket. So when somebody comes and says your own wish list, right? When they say, "I'd love to give $1,000," what could you use $1,000 for? You better know what you can do.
Exactly.
$1,000.
If you have to think about it, you've kind of failed in your job.
Yeah, and
you should know what how someone gives $25, what you think it would go well for,
right,
and $2 million,
right,
and everything in between.
Right. Make sure though you've checked that list out for most churches. Okay, larger churches, I want large churches. But especially for our small, mid-sized churches, make sure you've checked against that with your inner core of leaders or your ministry
team. Your ministry team,
because you want to make sure that that's what's going to happen, not your own little pet project. Okay.
Right.
We got to keep going.
All right. So administration team, like it includes finances, but you're building. Building and grounds, maintenance and all that kind of stuff, as well as usage. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. And keeping the parking lot plowed when it snows and all that kind of stuff, and databasing, office support, and all that. Making copies. That's your administration or your support team takes care of that. Okay, there's a third team, and we call it the policy team, or I love this. ChatGPT told us call it the Vision Guardians. I like that Vision Guardian team. All right, so but they're your board, whatever you call your administrative team, and here's what we want to really nuance this, because most boards in most churches are management boards. And there's no place on this planet, in my personal opinion, for a nonprofit board to be a management board. They only meet every so often, and what they become is the bottleneck for ministry. And they spend most of the time saying no, or we can't afford it, and they're trying to manage and micromanage. And we've got to stop that so that ministry can happen at the hands of the ministry team.
So you may relate to this. So many people relate to this. Somebody has an idea for a ministry. It has to go to the board. You take it to the board, and the board says, well, that sounds like it could be a good idea. Go talk to the property committee. So the person goes and talks to the property committee, and they say, well, yeah, that sounds like that could work. That could be a good idea, but we have to take it back to the board. So you take it back to the board, and now the board is saying, well, I don't know.
How are we going to fund it?
Yeah, are we going to have to figure that out? 6 months later, or so, the person doesn't come back anymore because they're gone.
They're
And
frustrated and have left.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm talking property, but I've seen this over and over again with things like a vacation Bible
Yeah.
school or a weekend program.
I watched someone try to plan a vacation Bible school. It was September before someone said yes. It was like, yeah, there's a problem with your system.
Okay, so but
yeah.
that system over and
Right.
over again, that's the system.
Yes, the
So
system is a problem.
That is not guarding the vision
Right.
in that
No,
case,
no, that-
right? That's
it's-
being the what do they call it? The doorkeeper.
Yeah, the doorkeeper,
or-
gatekeeper.
yeah,
The
the
gatekeeper.
gatekeepers.
All right,
Okay.
so what is the role of your board? The board's role is they do three things, okay? Number one is they hold the pastor responsible for achieving the vision and aligning the congregation with the mission.
accountable.
They're accountable.
They
right.
hold them
accountable
accountable.
for that. Okay, so the pastor comes and says, "This is what we're going to do this year. This is the direction we're going to go. This is how I'm going." The board goes, "Great." And at the end of the year, they're going, "How do we do?" And it's like, "Well, we went over here, we never got there." And that's the board saying, "What's going on?" And you don't want to do it. They don't want to hold accountable just once a year. But anyway,
Right, yeah.
Are we moving forward with that? That's there. Now, they don't hold anyone else on the staff accountable. Okay, no one needs more than one boss besides the CEO, the executive director, or the pastor. They have a board they report
Right.
to, and that's where the numbers are.
Right.
But the youth director, the children's minister, the worship leader, they report to the pastor or to the team leader there's a downline from the pastor, not to the board. The board is not their supervisor. Like I said, no one needs more than one. So you hold if the worship pastor is messing up and it's becoming a problem, and the board has to mention it, they mention it to the pastor, and the pastor is the one who deals with it or not, as the case may
But the
be.
board,
They don't
the
intervene.
board should never even it should never
Right.
even get to the board.
Right, the
Bad
pastor's supposed to do
Because,
it.
Yeah,
That's
if
the
there's a
accountability
problem-
piece.
Yeah, if there's a problem happening down there in your staff or in one of your ministries, and minister, wow, you need to make sure that you're keeping track of what the numbers are, what did the education do, what did discipling do, blah, blah, blah. You need to be doing that on a monthly basis.
You need to be talking to your 4 team leaders.
Right, and if you've got a new team leader, you're going to be talking every week for the first at least 3 months. I know that's a whole other conversation, but you've got to stay on top of it. And when you meet with your board, you celebrate what's going on. But when you're not doing your job with those ministry teams, and you're not doing your job, really, even with the
Right.
finance, you need to be talking with finance. You've got to be talking with HR. When you have to, like when the board hears about it or whatever, your
When the
administrative
board
vision-
has to step in,
Yeah.
you've not done your job.
Yeah, bad.
But that means that really we're talking about a situation where it's working right. Okay,
Yeah, we want to talk about working right.
The pastor is having regular conversations with the 4 key leaders
Right.
and keeping up with what's going on.
Right.
And the board is meeting with the pastor to find out what's going on and to
Right,
hold him
right.
accountable as for those numbers. Okay, so that's number one is accountability. They hold the pastor accountable for mission alignment and vision attainment. Second thing is they monitor and set policy as needed based on what's going on in the congregation. Like for instance, I was at a congregation and there was a booking company says, "Listen, you've got the biggest venue in town that's available for weddings, and we'd really like to be able to book weddings there, but we work with people who want to have champagne to toast the bride. Can we allow alcohol in there?" And that's a policy issue. And so the board had to set the policy. We went to the board and said, "Hey, this is what's going on," and they set the policy. And that's a policy issue, and that's a board issue. That's what they do. They set policy, and the reality is you shouldn't have to set policy very often.
No.
And the reality is you probably don't need to meet with the pastor as an accountability group very often, probably quarterly. The third thing they do, and the last thing they do, is they approve the budget that has come from the administration team or the support team.
The support team.
Okay, they're not the ones, they don't create the budget. They look at it and go, "Yeah, that's great." And it should be, again, a time of celebration.
That's right.
Because of what the ministry is going to get done.
That's right.
So your ministry team does ministry. Your support team or your administration team make
Supports
sure
ministry.
that the resources are there so your ministry team can do what needs to get done. And your board is your policy team, and they help make sure they're the vision guardian, saying to the pastor, "Are we getting there? Are we getting there? How can we help?"
And
They're supportive of that.
Right.
Yep.
They don't dictate what the pastor's doing in
Right.
those regards, right? I mean, have a very clear, we talk about this all the time.
Right.
Everybody needs to have
This
a
is
position.
where we're going.
Well, no, but
Right.
yeah, everybody has a position, a description, including the pastor.
Exactly.
Right.
And
This
it's
is what
not a
you're
bullet point
responsible
list,
for.
a mission.
That's
missional job
right.
description.
Exactly. Every time I have reviewed a pastor, a staff person, the way it goes down is based on those precepts, what it is that we've agreed their ministry is, and then of course we look at values and how they're living out their life. Okay.
Right. So we have 3 teams, and they have very separate responsibilities, but they have to work together in symbiosis, I guess.
Right.
They're helping each other. The ministry team has got to do its job and has to have the resources to do that job, and that's the support team or the administration team's job to make sure they have the resources. But the ministry team also has to coordinate with the administration team. They go back and forth so that we're not double booking a room. So that so the ministry team doesn't say, well, but I wanted that room, but I have this room. They were working together symbiotically to make sure things are smooth.
Sure.
Okay, they have to work both ways. And the policy team, of course, is working to just at the 30,000-foot level primarily to make sure the church stays on track for its vision.
I do want to point this out, though. The ministry team has 4 core
strategies, right?
Well, I call them fractals. So
Right.
you have 4 core fractals. The administrative team also has 4 core fractals, but the policy team is one. One is united. They're not bifurcated like that.
Right.
Or
Bifurcated.
Bifurcated, yes, like buffered. Right. So you're basically in a way working with 9 teams, 4 within 1, 4 within 2, and then the one.
And just last thing about the policy team, your board team, and that is a lot of churches have very large teams.
Yes.
And what I find is the smaller the church, the larger the board.
Yeah.
The larger the church, the smaller the board. It's really amazing that the small church thinks they need to have. I was at a church, literally, they had 70 members and 60 served on the board. What's wrong with this picture? They said, well, no one wants to serve. Well, no wonder no one wants to serve, because everyone has to serve.
Everybody's there.
So really, truly, 12 is the maximum that you want on any board.
Right.
And again, the larger churches we work with tend to have 4 people and the pastor, and they operate and make the decisions and the policy decisions based on what the needs of the church is,
Right.
working with the staff. And so the reality is, folks, even if you have a small church, really 4 people, 5 with the pastor is really all you need.
On the policy team.
On the policy.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just
right.
wanna make
Yeah.
sure
On the policy
we're
team.
all in here.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, so
Yeah.
so there you are. All right. So practical steps. Last thing to say, and we started with this, so we're going to
Okay.
end with this.
All right.
Is that choosing your folks, choosing the people who are on these teams. You're always looking for people who are committed to the vision, mission, and values. You're looking for people who are practicing their spirituality. When in Acts 6, when they made a mess of the food pantry, when the people came to the pastors and said, you got to solve this problem, the pastors didn't say, go find someone who's an expert in food management or food distribution management. They said, go find someone's, actually go build a team that are well known to you, they have a reputation, and they are spiritually adept, and they have a history of making good decisions. They're wise. And then you start looking at passion and what they do and all the rest. So choose people based on their spirituality and their passions and their commitment to the church's DNA, the mission and vision and values.
Okay, so I also want to say to you is that churches are caught into a system already, right? I mean, you already have policies into place. You've got bylaws that you have to follow. Form follows function. So you don't want to touch bylaws right now. You may have to suspend a part of them to work with that. But take those committees and start to think team. So look at your committees. Those of you who have committees and have to stay within committee structure.
For the time being.
For the time being,
Right,
right?
yeah,
Okay,
right.
I'm there.
Yeah.
So take those and then start to say, okay, what kind of team would they be on? Like Christian Ed's a ministry team, right? We might call it something else, but
Right.
I'm just talking
Right,
usual
yeah.
language, right? Stewardship is going to be an administrative team. You've got I don't know. You've got
you're building and
personnel.
grounds.
That's and property, right,
Right.
is over here in administration.
You have outreach.
You have outreach.
That's a
It's
send
going to be a
ministry
ministry,
typically,
right?
right.
So just start to section those, and then eventually you can take like all of these particular committees, like a committee, and you may have more than one that would fit in the, say, education committee or something like that. So we can talk more about that another day, or please, that's one of the services Effective Church Group provides, and we would love to talk to you more about how you can make these shifts, because we just want for your church to be effective. We want you to be sustainable, because Lord knows the kingdom of God needs you.
All right. Hey, we are out of
so
time.
out of time.
And we will see you next week.
Have a great week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.